Dorian Blake, a brilliant but eccentric book hunter and self-confessed bibliomaniac, heads the small firm Blake & Associates Literary Investigations in San Francisco. From their loft-style office on Clementina Street, Dorian and his teammates track missing manuscripts, authenticate dubious discoveries, and navigate a shadow world of collectors, auction sharks, and occult bibliophiles. Each case is a mystery whose solution hinges on deep book lore, forensic bibliography, and treacherous human motives. Prologue. The reading room that went blind. The first sign of sabotage wasn't the missing titles, it was the silence. At 2:11 a.m., the biometric lock to the gilded collection of the Blythe archive disengaged with a sigh. The security feed, stored redundantly across 6 cloud mirrors, showed nothing. No movement, no trigger, just a flicker of static, then hours of static. And in the morning, 3 incunabula had vanished, replaced with blank vellum copies. Their catalogue entries still existed, just rewritten, with new authors, new dates. One even claimed its binding was manufactured by OpenAI in 2024. The library belonged to Holden Quist, billionaire founder of Quistora, the search engine that had accidentally re-indexed half the world's knowledge in its own image. His private library, a 10-story concrete ziggurat nestled in Marin's redwoods, was a vault of vanities. Hand-pressed Gutenberg folios, stolen scholars' notebooks, and entire rare book rooms imported whole from failing institutions. And now something had turned it inside out. Quist's personal archivists would later swear that the air itself felt different that night, as though some atmospheric librarian had opened every window of history and let the weather in. A faint hint of cold iron, lamp black ink, and damp 15th century lye. The next morning the silence persisted, thick, gummy, the hush of a chapel after the congregation has fled. A single tradesman's daisy wheel printer, long decommissioned, had mysteriously powered on and repeated one Latin phrase until its ribbon frayed. Memoria falx est. Memory is a scythe. 1. Quist calls Blake. Dorian Blake took the call from Quist's personal assistant while staring down a codex of John Donne's sermons in his loft. A faint mildew from the binding reminded him of theology school basements and long-dead debates. "Mr. Quist is asking for your expertise," the assistant said. "He believes he's been digitally burgled." Blake snorted. "I'm a bookman, not a firewall." There's more. The alterations to his catalogue appear editorial. Someone changed not just records, but meaning. Now that got his attention. "Send me the audit logs," Blake said, "and tell Mr. Quist that revenge is usually a messy genre." Before he hung up, a second chime splintered the line, an incoming video call from England. On screen appeared the snowy-haired, pince-nez-wearing face of Professor Alaric Farnsworth of Trinity College, Cambridge, last seen helping the Codex team unmask a forger who'd embedded deep-fake illuminations in Gutenberg type. "Dorian, old son," Farnsworth said in his clipped Fenland baritone, "I gather a certain Holden Quist is in distress. I've been tracking database anomalies that smell distinctly of Granger Blythe's handiwork. Consulting offer, gratis. I still owe you for that business with the counterfeit Canterbury bifolium." Blake raised an eyebrow. "Pack your tweed." 2. The Ziggurat. The Quist archive tower rose like a modernist fortress, all matte concrete and copper-louvered windows. Inside, humidity was a controlled 48%. Air smelled of money, climate control, and new leather bindings. A robot named Marlowe offered them espresso. Blake, Meera Patel, Clara Havelock, and Leo Salgado stood before Quist's vast glass desk. He looked less like a tech mogul than a cult leader in relaxation. Barefoot, cashmere hoodie, gaze like frost behind wireframes. "I built this library to preserve human genius," Quist said, waving to a wall of scrolls. But someone just rewrote it. Mira flipped through the audit trail. You're missing 12 books, and at least 30 catalogue entries have been reassigned new titles. All the meta-descriptions are suspiciously literary. Leo scrolled. Whoever did this was inside your mark schema. Deeply. Some entries include margin notes about catalogue theory. Quist stiffened. He left notes. Clara stepped forward. He? Quist nodded grimly. Granger Blythe, former head archivist, retired 6 years ago after we clashed about metadata harmonization. I wanted optimization. He wanted poetry. Blake tapped a knuckle against the glass. You fired a librarian. Now he's redacted your kingdom. Interlude 2A, Wheels Up. Mira's phone chimed. Flight manifest. Professor Farnsworth was already en route from Heathrow, ETA 6 hours. She glanced at Blake. He's bringing a portable Raman scanner and 4 ounces of dichromatic dust. Says he'll explain. Blake allowed himself a rare grin. Never underestimate a Cambridge man on holiday. 3. The breadcrumb bookmarks. In the sub-basement where the altered books had been held, Mira flipped through one of the blank vellum forgeries. Between 2 leaves, she found a folded card catalogue slip, hand-typed, Dublin, 2008. You told me to digitize silence. Now I write it back in. GB. Leo blinked. He's taunting Quist. Mira held the slip to the light. Embossed seal, British Library. But the paper's not quite right. Replica, Blake said. He's been faking physical history to match his forgery of metadata. Clara peered at the shelf. This was intentional. He didn't steal books. He rewrote them out of the system. Erased them from a billionaire's worldview, Blake added, which in Silicon Valley is like unmaking reality. Clara's eyes narrowed. But why leave a breadcrumb in plain sight? Leo answered by flicking on an ultraviolet torch. Hidden fibers in the slip glowed indigo, spelling coordinates. 37 degrees 55 minutes north, 122 degrees 34 minutes west. Point Reyes, California, inside Quist's own county, yet outside his firewalls. Blythe wanted them mobile. 4. Footnote. Dublin, 2008. Blake remembered Blythe, an odd, reedy man who spoke in clauses and walked like he was in a library even when outside. He had once given a speech at a metadata summit, arguing that books should retain the ghosts of their miscataloguings. Our errors are as historic as our facts, he had said. Mira pulled Quist's old emails. Blythe's departure had come after a failed integration with the Quistora Index, during which over 10,000 documents were auto-tagged as influencer marketing. He called it bibliocide, Mira said. And now he's committed a biblio-terrorist's act of revenge, Blake replied. 4A. The Point Reyes palimpsest. 45 minutes later, wind whipped salt through the slats of an abandoned life-saving station boathouse on Point Reyes. The coordinates matched. Inside, the floor had been cleared except for a single pedestal reading table bearing one object. A palimpsest, 3 leaves scraped and overwritten at least twice since the 1400s. Farnsworth, fresh from the airport and smelling faintly of jet fuel, and Earl Grey bent over it like a surgeon. He dusted the parchment with the dichromatic powder. The erased layer bloomed infrared under his Raman lens, revealing Blythe's newest message curling beneath the medieval Latin. Reshelving in progress. Seek the shelf that casts 2 shadows. Classic Blythe, the professor murmured. His graduate thesis at Trinity argued that every act of cataloguing is simultaneously erasure. 2 shadows, original text, and destructive record. He's leading us to a liminal shelf, something simultaneously present and absent. Farnsworth unsheathed a fountain pen and signed the margin with a tiny fox glyph, his private mark acknowledging custodial contact. Blake noticed. You still practicing your silent stewardship? Always, Farnsworth said, capping the pen. You'd be amazed how many battles can be won by quietly recording that they happened. 5. The Quist Codex. One altered book, a 1623 edition of The Anatomy of Melancholy, had been returned, misfiled in a refrigerator meant for 19th century travelogues. It now bore a fake colophon, printed by ghosts, annotated by absence. Clara found a slip of microfilm in the back paste down. They developed it. It contained an inverted scan of Quist's internal donor catalogue. Books once thought to have been purchased from defunct libraries were instead gifts from anonymous foundations. Leo compared data. Some of these institutions never closed. These were leveraged takeovers. Quist pressured them into liquidation. Mira's eyes narrowed. He didn't just build a library. He orchestrated the extinction of others. Blake leaned back, and Blythe was watching the whole time. Farnsworth added, almost gently, "You see, Dorian, Blythe's revenge isn't theft. It's historiographic correction. He's forcing Quist's curators to confront provenance violence, the quiet suffocation of prior ownership." 5a. The Shelf That Casts Two Shadows. Guided by Blythe's palimpsest riddle, the team descended to an auxiliary stacks bay where mobile compactor shelves slid on tracks. Under auxiliary lighting, Farnsworth noticed that one carriage, Class Z bibliography, produced a double silhouette on the polished concrete. The shelf and an identical phantom cast by recessed ultraviolet floodlights aimed at the floor sensors. "Two shadows," he whispered. He depressed an emergency crank. The shelf slid, revealing a false back. Inside, a hollow column containing 12 tiny slipcases. Each slipcase held a micro SD card labeled with Dewey Decimals scratched into copper foil. Leo's laptop bloomed with scrolling indices as he read the cards. They were nothing less than an underground mirror of the Quist catalogue, only each entry flagged the original custodial mark of the owning library Quist had acquired. Some entries bore line-item notes of coercive purchase, eminent domain threats, or forced donations. Mira closed her eyes a moment. It's a reverse Rosetta Stone. For every book Quist whitewashed, Blythe left an affidavit of truth. Professor Farnsworth laid a gloved hand on the shelf. He's built an ethics engine hiding in plain sight, inside Quist's own physical architecture. 6. The Reverse Catalogue. At Mira's suggestion, they resequenced the sabotage logs. Blythe didn't just vandalize, she said. He created an inverted library. Each altered entry led to a text that had been removed from Quist's shelves over the years, books about protest, worker organization, and dissent. "He's recreating the erased archive," Blake whispered. Leo found the source server, a hidden node in Quist's architecture, masked as a null stack. Blythe had stored 837 texts that had been deaccessioned in silence. Now they were being reintroduced through edits, metadata sabotage, and forgeries. He turned Quist's search engine against itself. Leo grinned. "By becoming the ghost in the machine," Mira added. Farnsworth, hunched over the code, chuckled. "He's smuggled ethical contraband under the customs nose of an algorithm. I need to buy this man a pint, if we survive meeting him." 6a. The Mechanical Scribe. That night, the team bivouacked in the Ziggurat's redundant disaster recovery wing, which doubled as Quist's personal museum of bookmaking automata. Far in the back whirred a forgotten prototype, the Scribe X7, a mechanical arm originally designed to re-illuminate missing leaves in damaged manuscripts. Leo powered it up. Its optic cluster still contained firmware from Blythe's tenure. A cache directory popped open. Hex-named routines called Ink Ghost, Erasure Dance, Colophon Doppel. Each routine bore a timestamp matching the sabotage night. The Scribe X7, it turned out, had been Blythe's co-conspirator, hand-copying blank vellum sheets to replace stolen originals, its steel quill guided by his scripts. Clara watched the arm jitter out a fragment of text in iron gall ink. All libraries are palimpsests. He weaponized preservation tech, she breathed, turned a repair tool into an agent of falsification. Farnsworth photographed the code on the control panel with academic glee. This will make a marvelous cautionary tale for my digital conservation seminar. 7. The Librarian's Letter. On day 3, they found the letter. Handwritten in walnut ink, tucked inside a hollowed-out copy of the Ethics of Classification. Dear Holden, you optimized beauty into oblivion. You claimed preservation while burying the inconvenient, but the catalogue remembers. And now I have inverted yours. Yours in perfect bibliographic vengeance, Granger Blythe. P.S. The real treasure is in the annotations. Yours were deleted. Mine remain. Blake stared at the signature. Where would a librarian go, he asked softly, after he's burned the shelves? 8. The vanishing point. Clara uncovered surveillance from the night the first sabotage occurred. At 2:11 a.m., the building lights had dimmed for 7 seconds. That was Blythe's window. Leo traced a temporary login from the network. It was routed through a Tor bridge linked to the Library Hotel in Prague. Prague? Blake raised an eyebrow. Where Blythe gave that metadata talk in 2008, Mira recalled. They booked red-eyes. Farnsworth, still suffering time zone whiplash, nevertheless quavered with excitement. Ah, the Clementinum. I haven't inhaled its stucco dust in years. 9. The Prague cipher. The Library Hotel sat tucked near a Charles Bridge tower, its suites named after Dewey categories. Blake checked into 020, Library Science. At 2:11 a.m., his door creaked open. Granger Blythe stood there, older, gaunter, eyes like old foxglove. I wondered when you'd arrive, he said. You're late. I've already reshelved the truth. He invited them into the suite. The walls were covered in handwritten bibliographic citations, each one a book Quist had removed. Blythe had recreated them, not physically, but through catalogue metadata hijacking. He had infiltrated Quistora's entire archival index, rewriting search paths to lead to absent books. You made ghosts readable, Mira whispered. Blythe nodded, and taught them to haunt again. Farnsworth approached him, half-bowed. You know you've broken at least 9 European data integrity statutes? Blythe's lips quirked. That's all? Either Brussels is getting lax, or you've miscounted. 9. A. Midnight in the Clementinum. Blythe led them through a servant's stair into the adjoining Clementinum, the venerable National Library, closed for renovations. He flicked on the emergency lanterns. Frescoed saints and cartographic globes glimmered in dust. At the center of the Baroque hall, beneath a cosmic clock ceiling, stood a brass chamber organ whose pipes had been removed. In their place, Blythe had installed reel-to-reel magnetic tape decks. Each reel encoded one of the vanished books as binaural audio. Typewriter clacks, representing characters. Silence, representing spaces. You digitized absence as music, Farnsworth breathed. Absence sings, Blythe replied. Soon the tapes will be uploaded to every open-access repository, disguised as birdsong datasets. Scholars will ask why starlings quote Tolstoy. He turned to Mira. Tell Quist, a library isn't a brand. It's a verb. Blake felt the hall tilt. Verb, action, continuous tense. The librarian hadn't burned the books, he'd set motion into print. Blythe unlocked a wrought-iron gate leading to the astronomical tower. At the top, moonlight revealed a portable radio transmitter jury-rigged to blast the tape data at high frequency, piggybacking on the world time signal. Billions of radio-controlled clocks would invisibly receive the ghost texts, second by second, encoded in the jitter of the timecode. "See," Blythe said, "I've turned chronology itself into an interlibrary loan." Leo's jaw dropped. "That's beautiful anarchy." Farnsworth allowed a slow clap. "I take back my earlier threat to prosecute. You, sir, are insane in exactly the right measure." 10. Truth in absence. "Why now?" Blake asked. Blythe poured tea. "Because Quist's library is set to be mirrored into a new AI model, trained to know the great books. But the training set has been purged, sanitized. I couldn't save the originals, but I could teach the machine doubt." He smiled. "They'll build a cathedral of knowledge, and I've cracked the foundation." Clara cocked her head. "And now?" "I vanish. I've left enough metadata anomalies to seed a generation of questions. That's the only revenge a librarian truly wants. The return of inquiry." He handed Blake a final card. "For your archives, Mr. Blake. Not every library needs a door." Blake offered the card to Farnsworth, who scanned it under his Raman flashlight. The fibers fluoresced to reveal a third layer of ink, coordinates to Trinity's Wren library. Farnsworth gasped. "He's hidden something in my own house." Blythe only winked. 11. The afterword. Back in San Francisco, Quist's engineers scrambled to patch the catalogue. But every day new titles began surfacing. Ghost books with unknown provenance, real books marked missing for decades. Quistora's trust index plummeted, and Blake received a final delivery, a custom-bound blank book. Inside only one inscription, in gold leaf: "Revenge is best served well indexed." Blake placed it beside the Anatomy of Melancholy. It felt right there. The following week, Professor Farnsworth returned to Cambridge. Under cover of night, he opened a concealed drawer in the Wren Library's foundation stone and retrieved a single quire of medieval parchment. Codex Nessians, a legendary lost treatise on the philosophy of unknowing, sealed with Blythe's wax sigil. Attached, a note reading, "Shelve this where even certainty can't find it." Farnsworth chuckled, locked the quire in a black oak chest, and drafted an anonymous catalogue record. Location: extra-dimensional. Status: contemplating. Epilogue: The librarian vanishes. Months later, at a conference in Zurich, a metadata specialist presented strange anomalies appearing across digital catalogues. Someone was seeding citations from books that didn't exist, yet somehow always led back to truths no longer taught. In the back of the room, a man in linen gloves adjusted his spectacles, smiled, and quietly left through a fire exit labeled "Restricted, Archival Staff Only."